So, after depressive foyist Will, we've had emotional foiblish Kate. And now we're going to go on to Peter Hitchens, member of the International Socialists.
Not now.
Until 1975, columnist for the Mail. I always thought you were extremely Trotskyite. Columnist for Do Walk Up, as I'm talking, on the Mail on Sunday. Occasional broadcaster and author of several books, most recently The Phony Victory, and attracted to both parties, but now belongs to none at all. Peter Hitchens, lift our spirits.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm here actually to persuade you of the virtues of gloom. Kate's optimism is absurdity. Optimism is a terrible code for living, and one shall always end in unhappiness. It's being pessimistic that keeps me so cheerful. I want to first of all to explain to you exactly why it is you should adopt gloom by telling a brief story about a welder working late at night in one of the old shipyards we used to have in Clydebank and no longer do, working so late that he was probably the last person in the dock working on a rather precarious piece of scaffolding on the side of perhaps an ocean liner. And as he prepared to leave, suddenly the scaffolding gave way beneath him and he fell many, many feet until eventually he grabbed onto the side of the dock. And below him, perhaps 200 feet of concrete and then a puddle of oily water and nobody to be seen. So he called out, "Is there anybody up there?" And a vast sepulchral voice came from very, very far above saying, "I am here, my son." And he said, "What shall I do?" And the voice said, "Let go." And he said, "Is there anybody else up there?" I am the sepulchral voice. I'm telling you, let go. Let go of your illusions. Let go of the ridiculous fantasy that we have that we are a rich, powerful, important country. Many years ago, Dennis Healy said that we should probably get used to being an island Austria. I wish that we can now look forward to anything as stable and prosperous as that. But even so, it might be wise if we began to understand just how precipitous our fall has been. I grew up at the very end of the empire. I was born in the empire. I was a subject of His Majesty King George VI when I was born in Malta, then the headquarters of the now non-existent Mediterranean Fleet of the Royal Navy. And I had to concentrate slightly in the next few minutes on two things, one of them railways and the other the Navy, because they dominated so much of my childhood. The Britain of those days was full of wheezing, clanking, panting steam engines with names like 601 Squadron and Sir Winston Churchill. And I saw, for much of my life, great grey warships gliding in and out of naval bases. So I was moved by these things. And I would just tell a couple of brief stories here about how these things have changed, not in my lifetime, but in what you might call the recent lifetime of the country. In 1906, the greatest advance in military technology of the era, the construction of HMS Dreadnought, the first really heavily armored, heavily gunned battleship, which completely changed the naval arms race and the balance of power in the world, was completed in 1 year and 1 day in Portsmouth Dockyard, from the laying of the keel to the finishing and launching of the ship. It took 14 months before she was actually steaming. In 2007, the then Labour government ordered the construction of HMS Queen Elizabeth, a new aircraft carrier looking very much like a multi-story car park afloat, which will be obsolete by the time, sometime next year, 14 years after the announcement of its construction, by the time it actually obtains any aircraft. Well, that's one example. In 1836, the bill, or rather the act authorizing the construction of the Great Western Railway from London to Bristol was passed by Parliament after a longish struggle. Immediately, without any aid of JCBs or any kind of modern technology or electronics, Isambard Kingdom Brunel commenced to construct what was then the most advanced, and in some ways still is, the most advanced piece of railway line from London to Bristol. It took him 5 years. By contrast, what is known to travelers like me on that line as First Late Western began to electrify it so many years ago that I've forgotten how long ago it was, ran over budget to a colossal extent, and never finished it. These seem to me to sum up in many ways the contrast between the Britain that was and the Britain which many of us still fondly imagine we still are, and the Britain that is, one which was competent, effective, capable, and efficient, and one which is now sloppy, incapable of completing or indeed devising anything worth doing. This extends into so many things. I mean, Kate spoke of our freedom. I don't know why she spoke of it in such, how should I put it, effusive terms. I took some time studying this, apart from Michael Howard's assault on the right to silence, and William Hague's and Anthony Blair's assault on the laws against double jeopardy in prosecution. We have, in my lifetime, pretty much dismantled jury trial. The majority verdict means that the independent jury is really no longer in existence, and make ceaseless attacks on civil liberty on every conceivable occasion on the weakest possible excuse. I was amused the other day, and you'll have to take a moment to think about this, when I saw a headline, "Prisons to introduce airport-style security." This means that people who've been convicted of quite serious crimes, murder, theft, armed robbery, that kind of thing, are finally now, on arrival in prison, going to be subjected to what you, innocent persons, have to undergo when you want to fly to Paris. Is this the right way around? On the contrary, it's an indication. I mean, when you fly anywhere, which I try not to do, and you have to have your testicles scanned by a revolving machine and your luggage searched and be treated as if you were a guilty person, this is a country in which the presumption of guilt is now pretty much universal. And that is where we live. And the idea that we're still a beacon of freedom seems to me to be fanciful beacon of freedom. When I was at school, it was generally stated that a set of English A-levels were equivalent to an American university degree. And this is one of the reasons why there was then a thing called the brain drain, where the United States spent an awful lot of money scooping up the products, largely of our extremely effective and excellent state grammar schools, to go and work there. So what did we do? We abolished the grammar schools and created, in the name of equality, probably the worst state education system in the advanced world, whose certificates are multiple, and many people have large piles of them, but which are in relation to the education available in this country 50 years ago, much as a 10 billion mark note was in relation to a golden sovereign. They are spectacular, but worthless, and our education system is a national disgrace, and is one of the reasons for many of the deep problems which we have, which we have been unable to face and have attempted to overcome with, amongst other things, mass immigration. Most of the other vainglorious statistics about our being the, the 6th or 7th largest economy are actually based on more fantasies. Our actual position in GDP per capita is round about 26th in the world. Our current account deficit is appalling. Our levels of public and private debt are pretty much unprecedented in peacetime and are simply unrepayable. To imagine for a moment that this can possibly end well is to be self-deluding. And the ultimate symbol of this hubris is our ridiculous pretense of being a great power. We, a country which could not defeat a collection of gangsters and protection racketeers and surrendered to them in 1998 in Northern Ireland, still pretend to be a world power and maintain and propose to extend and renew the Trident nuclear weapon, a gigantic Cold War superpower weapon, totally useless to us, which we cannot afford. This is the symbol of all the hubris which we possess. It is absolutely everything that is wrong with this country. The fantasy that we are more important than we are, the fantasy that we are richer than we are, the fantasy that we stand for anything much anymore, all things which will never, ladies and gentlemen, never under any circumstances be put right as long as we entertain these delusions. And that is why it is so important to say the things that I'm saying. I'm not just saying them because because I've been invited to say them. I am saying them because I believe them to be true. I'm saying them because if there is to be any future for this country, which I frankly seriously doubt, then it has to be achieved by a recognition of reality. I love every field and hedgerow of this country. I was brought up to believe that it was a beacon of all kinds of wonderful things, which I see rotting away. I was brought up pretty much to know by heart John of Gaunt's dying speech. But what do I see? That this country, which was wont to conquer others, hath now made shameful conquest of itself. And it is because we need to recognize this reality that I urge you so very much to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Well done. Good luck. You'll be fine. Thank you.